The caretaker said the miners and their bosses got on very well, all things considered. Never was a strike. They shortened the hours from 12 to 10, then again from 10 to 8. No trouble about it, though. They didn't have any mining disasters in Bodie either. No cave-ins or anything like that. I asked him about the cemetery. There didn't seem to be many graves, but he said a lot of them had been erased by the snows and by time. The thing that impressed me was how many children were there. In the graveyard of a ghost town, you'd expect to find old people buried. That little girl was only 3. She was killed by an Indian who was swinging a pick. It was an accident. The angel is pointing to the place where the pick went in. Funerals would wind up that hill. They were big occasions. There was a tall black hearse with 4 black plumes, and the whole town would turn out to follow it up the hill. Procession would start on Main Street at that little building. That's the morgue. Used to be a photographer's studio, but he went out of business. The undertaker didn't. You see a lot of safes in Bodie. A lot of vaults, too. Those vaults were the strongest buildings in town. You think they kept the gold there? So did I. No, that's where they kept the liquor. I think they had a high regard for spirits. One fellow kept his, appropriately enough, in a hollow tombstone up in the graveyard. You see where the back has fallen off? Held 6 quarts. I really don't know what I expected to see when I came to Bodie. Just a lot of old houses, I suppose. Well, Bodie had them. Some were standing, but leaning. Some were leaning a little bit more. And some had given up altogether, like the blacksmith shop there. No, I really can't say what I expected to find in a ghost town, but certainly not people. There is a population, though. 9, counting the kids. The caretaker told me the Bells lived in that house, so I called on Mrs. Bell. A little lady in a faded blue dress. Didn't want to smile because she had a missing tooth. Mrs. Bell, I said, I understand you're the only lady in Bodie. That's right, she said. I'm the Belle of Bodie. Well then, Mrs. Bell, I asked, I wonder if you can tell me something about the town. She wouldn't do it, though. She said she was a newcomer. Only been there 20 years. She told me she would call her husband. He had been born there. Well, Mr. Bell knew all about Bodie, all right. I asked him about the locked houses. Seems the whole town is owned by a man named Kane. J.S. Kane, that is, not the old man. Old Vic Kane owned most of Bodie in his day. His son owns it now, what's left of it. But old Vic owned it when there were 12,000 people, when there were 17 mines, when they were hauling gold out of the mountains every day. Old Vic came from Canada way with nothing in his pockets but his hands. But before long, he'd gotten hold of the bank. That's the bank. In a card game, they say, but they always say something like that about any successful man. You know that. But before he was through, he had bought up the Standard Mine and practically anything else in town worth buying. They say he was controlled by some San Francisco millionaires. But as far as the people in Bodie were concerned, old Vic was the man. They made him the mayor. And that's his house. The only mayor the town ever had. Those were pretty rough days. I understand they used to have some real bad men, Mr. Bell. I'd heard stories about the bad men from Bodie. That jail might look like it's coming apart at the seams, but the cells are still plenty strong. They had to be. These bad men weren't the real citizens of Bodie, just a bunch of freebooters who drifted in from Virginia City and Aurora following the gold smell. They used to average 3 killings a day, always had a good supply of tombstones handy. That block of granite was a tombstone, too, in a way. Used to have a ceremony where they would lay a wreath on the block after a big fire and say, "Bodie is dead, Bodie is buried." They buried it 3 times, but the town wouldn't stay dead. Not as long as there was gold. Besides the Bells, there's another family in town, the Biggses. They account for the total population of 9, counting the kids. Mr. Biggs is a diamond drill man. He sets the diamonds in the bit himself. He told me that bit will go through anything, and I guess he's right. He has himself a claim on the other side of the mountain. First day they started drilling, they found a rattlesnake. So they're going to call it the Rattlesnake Mine. If you hear about a big strike east of the Sierras at the Rattlesnake Mine, that's the man. That was the answer, of course. That's why all the houses are locked. They're waiting for something like that. Waiting to be moved into when there's another big strike. Bodie is waiting to be a town again, to fill in the gaps left by the fires, to come alive. Funny thing about this town, you don't see any animals. No dogs, no cats. Even the bird houses are deserted. Maybe that's why it's so quiet. You can hear your footsteps following you. I looked in at the church. That's one of the few buildings that isn't locked. That and the jail. Church is in pretty good shape. Few boards pulled loose in the roof, but it's still pretty sound. And you can read the 10 Commandments without any trouble. Well, that's the town. Population has dropped considerably from the 12,000 they used to have, but they say it will come back. They all believe that. I believed it too when I talked to them. But when I got back to the city, saw that big, noisy, sprawling beehive, it became hard for me to realize there really was such a town as Bodie stuck up there in the mountains, behind all those movie stars' homes and orange groves. Town of Bodie. Bodie, California. No dogs, no cats, no modern conveniences. Population, 9.